Today I will be going over how I remelt soft plastic baits and turn them into new baits using injection molds. This is a great way to save money because you can recycle baits that you've already used or baits that you might not like fishing with. Today I'm cutting up some lures from Reaction Innovations, Zoom Baits, and Gambler Lures. I'm wanting to make some punching style baits and some speed worms that have that classic blackberry body with bright purple tails. Right now, I'm separating out the worms I want to use for the remelt. Then I'm cutting them up into small pieces so that they melt easier. If you've been bass fishing for any amount of time, you probably have a small collection of worms that you don't plan on using anymore. Remelting is a great way to put those soft plastics back to use. You can turn them into other types of baits, or you can even turn them into different parts of baits. Once I have a full cup, I'm ready to move on to the next component. One difficult part about remelting can be finding solid colors. Luckily, I have a bait and tackle store near me that sells bulk plastic baits, so I can find solid colors and buy them in bulk and save some money that way. One problem with remelting is that you never really know what kind of plastic you're working with. Different manufacturers use different mixes. Combining them without some sort of heat stabilizer can cause issues later down the road once it reaches a certain temperature. Now it's time to start cooking the plastic. I usually start with 3 minutes in the microwave and then see how that turns out. Starting with both cups of plastic since the initial melt takes the longest amount of time in the microwave. Later I will focus on just 1 cup of plastic that I am injecting with, as I will need to cook it for shorter and shorter amounts of time as it gets closer to temperature. One thing I like to do before the first pour is to heat my molds up a bit. This time it was nice and sunny, so they are going to sunbathe for several minutes. Now it's time to get ready to deal with the plastic equivalent of molten lava. I like to put on a pair of heat-resistant gloves. You definitely do not want to get this stuff on your skin once it gets hot. It's sort of like hot cooking oil that sticks to anything it touches until it cools off. I also like to take this time during the initial melt to get my stirring equipment ready, making sure there are no bits of glitter or plastic that could get into my current mix. The next several minutes will mostly be stirring your cooked plastic, checking the temperature, and cooking it some more until it gets to around 320 degrees. Once the plastic gets close to being done, I like to get my mold station to be injected. There isn't a set in stone way to place them, but I like for them to be as close as possible to prevent plastic from pouring onto the table. Now it's finally time to inject some plastic. You always want to make sure you stir one more time before sucking plastic up with your injector. That will make sure you don't suck up any unmelted chunks or settled salt at the bottom of the cup. As you can see, we got a little warmer than our target of 320, but that's not too far off and still below the burn point. First, to suck up the plastic with my injector, you definitely want to wear gloves for this part, as the injector body will get very hot as it ingests plastic. Then I set the nozzle of the injector into the port of the mold and press down with the plunger of the injector with ample but steady pressure. After I feel solid resistance, I remove the injector from the first mold and move on to the next one. Unfortunately, it looks like I failed to check the nuts on my second mold, as I got a bit of extreme blowout that would make a baby blush. When this sort of thing happens, the mold can become very hard to open. You sometimes have to get creative to get them open, but prying it open with a stirring knife will usually work as a last resort. That definitely did not turn out right. But the good news is, you can just toss your mess ups right back into the hot plastic cup to remelt and inject again. Now, let's see what things are actually supposed to look like. These punch bait tails turned out just right, and they'll be moving on to the next step. These tail pieces just have to be removed from their sprue and they're ready to go. For tails and other bait pieces that I'm going to put back in a mold, I like to lay them out on a drying rack until I'm ready to use them. The leftover sprue can then go back in the melted plastic cup to be used again. At this point, it is time to make the body of the baits. I start by inserting the tail portion back into the mold, making sure that it is seated correctly to prevent any flashing or incomplete injections. Once that is done, I close the molds and stage them for injection. Making the body of the bait is the same process as making the tails. Plastic is heated to above 320 degrees and injected into the mold. Once the mold cools down for several minutes, the baits can be removed and inspected. It's always good to make sure the body and the tail of the bait have melted completely when pouring baits like this. If not, the tails could easily be removed by smaller fish or just from casting the lure. For finished baits, I like to give them a bath in cool water for a few minutes. This helps cure the plastic. After they've had their bath, I take them out and let them dry for at least 24 hours on a drying rack. This will make sure that they are fully cured before packaging and that all the water is dried off. And there you go. That's how I make new baits out of remelted soft plastic lures.